Hi everyone, and welcome back. If you turned up last week and found that I wasn't here, I apologize. As you can see, I'm live this week. No back, no drugs, no bad back, no drugs. I'm doing well this week. We're having very interesting weather at the moment. It was plus 11 yesterday after weeks and weeks of minus 20 and horrible things like that. So yesterday we were outside, not wearing coats. It was kind of interesting. And but of course, all the snow is melting. And this winter in particular, we had so much snow, much more than usual. And now it's all melting. And we're suddenly discovering the house is not quite as waterproof as it should be. We had flooding in the basement yesterday, so we're mopping up basement puddles and trying to track down where the leak is. All fun stuff. But it only happens the one time a year, so we just have to wait out for the snow to melt so that we can get in there and actually fix things. So at the moment, we're constantly checking the size of the puddle outside to make sure it doesn't build up too high and start leaking back into the basement again. So fun stuff at the moment. I hope you're having good weather where you are and that you had a really good weekend. So let me have a quick look at comments here. Hi, Audrey. Hello. Hi, and Kathy. Hello there. Nice to see you here. Okay, so let's see. Where are we? Let me look at my notes. This day in history. Oh yes. Oh no, on the wet basement. Yeah, it was a fun day yesterday. This day in history. So there's just the one thing that I wanted to talk about. It's kind of an interesting one. For me, it's an interesting one anyway. 1944, so the last years of World War II, Mount Vesuvius erupted in Italy. It killed 26 people and thousands of people had to flee from the city. You may not realize, a lot of people don't, Vesuvius is the mountain that erupted in the 1st century AD and buried Pompeii. And it has been erupting since then on and off all throughout history. And 1944 was one of the last ones where it was a bad eruption and people died as a result of it, particularly as Naples, the city, is right at the base of the mountain there. So if it erupts, then the entire city has to evacuate, which is, a lot of people say, well, why do people live at the base of a volcano? But that's where all the very rich soil was. And still is, I should say. But that's where, so a lot of people would settle there because the farming, the ground, the soil was so rich and farming was good. So people would live there because of the soil and because they could grow good crops, not realizing that the mountain behind them was actually an active volcano. And of course, as we've got on in time, we've become the science has improved, so we've become a lot better at being able to predict eruptions, although sometimes we still get caught by surprise. Anyway, the 1944 eruption of Vesuvius was kind of interesting because it was during the Second World War, and the United States Army Air Forces, as they were called then, was based at Pompeii Airfield, which is just on the other side of the volcano from Naples. And the hot ash and all the eruptions, including the winds and the heat, destroyed, 88 aircraft they lost because of the eruption. So predicting the activity of volcanoes has improved considerably since then. But that was one of the more interesting ones. I am particularly fond of Vesuvius. It's a very interesting volcano. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm actually a bit of a volcano freak. I like to follow the volcanoes. There is some science sites online that I'm subscribed to that report faithfully about volcano eruptions. And I've done a bit of research into volcanoes and their eruptions. So One of these days, I'll figure out a way I can squeeze in a volcanic eruption into a romance novel. It would have to be romantic suspense or something like that, but I'll get it in there one of these days. It's one of my things. So let's have a quick look at comments. Junita, hello. Hi. Anna, hello. Anna is in Hungary at the moment. Oh, that should be interesting. What is the internet service like in Hungary? Are a lot of people online there like they are in North America? And Katerina, hello. I'm sure I've seen your name here before once or twice. Welcome back. So does anyone have any questions or anything like that? Put your questions in comments, any comments, observations, and I'll check them next time around. In the meantime, mailbag. I had a lot of email from everyone saying, oh no, you're back. But thank you to everyone who emailed me about my back and my foggy days and their regret that they didn't catch up with me on Facebook Live last week. As you can see, I'm back on deck. The back is working fine, no stabbing pain anymore. And I'm also somewhat alert. As usual, instead of being so foggy because of the medications. It was kind of interesting. A lot of the emails I was getting from everyone was recommendations for other medications I could try instead. But by that point, I was already past the worst of it. I really did not enjoy the feeling that, I basically lost 3 days of work because of one tablet, really, and a day of pain. So that was a bit disconcerting. Probably will resist taking them in the future. I may just have to wince my way through my day instead. So, and Anna, perfectly fine at the hotel where you're staying. Okay, well that's good. Yes, obviously you can stream a live Facebook Live session, so it must be pretty good there. Okay, so let's get on with series. How do authors build series? This was a question I got by email from one of the readers wanting to know how series were built. How did authors actually go about building a series as opposed to a single novel? So I thought I'd take a stab at that one because series are kind of interesting creatures. They come in all sorts of different disguises. So let's have a quick look at series. Traditionally published series are different from indie published series. That's because of the way that they are acquired and sold. Traditionally published authors will have to build an entire series arc up front, and they pitch it to their agent, who turns around and pitches it to traditional publishers. And book contracts are made on that entire series. Usually, traditionally published series are only 3 books. Now, this is for a series that has an overall story arc that goes right across from book 1 to the last book in the series. They're generally 3, maybe 5 books for a really big author. And the authors pitch the entire series storyline at the beginning. So when the publisher acquires the first book, they're actually acquiring rights to the rest of the series as well. However, with traditionally published books, that doesn't mean that the reader's going to get to see the entire series. It's one of the unfortunate facts about traditional publishing is that it's kind of technical, and I won't get into it here because I'm sure I'd bore some of you silly. But because the publishers will only print the same number of books as were sold the first time around, minus the returns that came back from the bookstores, that means that there is even less chance of the series selling further into it. So that's why you'll find in traditional publishing, very frequently, series get abandoned 2 or 3 books in and not picked up again. Sometimes traditionally published authors who have a series that tanks like that, although why it tanks is often nothing to do with the quality of the storytelling at all, or the story itself. And there could be readers out there that are dying to hear read the rest of the series. But publishers are not concerned about what readers want. Their concern is what the bookstores want, because the bookstores and the distributors are the ones that buy the books from the publishers. So the publishers will listen to bookstores and distributors, and they don't take into account what the readers want. That's up to the bookstores. So that's why quite often, if you get invested in a favorite series that's traditionally published, you get abandoned before the series is done. Sometimes the traditionally published author can get the rights for the series back. Doesn't happen very often, and they usually have to work pretty hard to do that. But if the series has a lot of potential, they sometimes figure it's worth going through all the contractual obligations to get their rights back. Then they will traditionally publish the original books in the series, and then indie publish all the rest of the series, so readers are not left hanging there waiting for the rest of the story. And in fact, I did that with a few of my series that were first published with Alora's Cave. I was 2 or 3 books into about 3 or 4 series when Alora's Cave and I parted ways. And I, for 2 years, spent my time meeting all the contract obligations in order to get the rights back. And then after the 2-year period, finally got my rights back so that I could go on and, well, first publish all the books that had been published through Alora's Cave under my own name as publisher, and then continuing on with the series. And some of the series you'll probably, well, they're my most popular ones. Kiss Across Time is the perfect one. I had 2 books out in that one before I started getting the rights back. The other one is Destiny's Trinities. That's one. The Stonebrood Saga, the one with the I'm having one of those days where I can't remember names. Gargoyles, the one with the gargoyles in it. That's the Stonebrood Saga. So there was a few series that I had to pick up and get the rights back, and then finish it by myself. Anyway, that's traditionally published series, which are a different animal. And basically how the author does that is they build the entire series in outline before they even sell the first book and start writing it. So it's all done in advance. For indie published authors like me now, there's about 3 different ways that they will write a series. And the first one is they stumble into the series purely by accident. They write a book that they think is just a one-off book. They put it out there, it gets an amazing response, and they suddenly sit up and think, oh, I should probably write a second book. Or they start getting lots of reader emails saying, when's the second book coming out? So authors can sometimes just back into a series quite by accident. It gets a good response and suddenly they've got to scramble and write another couple of books. Or they'll sit down and develop a longer series. Actually, I'm just trying to think, Kiss Across Time started off that way. It was never going to be a series. It was going to be a one-off novella for a series that Alora's Cave already had going. And it ended up getting such a strong response, and I enjoyed the characters so much. I mean, Varys and Brody, what is there not to like? So I just kept writing them, and the second book got published after that. Then I got all my rights back, and now I'm still writing even more of the Kiss Across Time series. The other way that indie authors can write series is they can do it the way I prefer to do it these days. They work out the entire series before they even start writing. But unlike traditional publishing, they know that the series is going to get published because they're in control of the entire series. That's why, for instance, with Once and Future King, Once and Future Hearts, I knew in advance, right at the beginning. I sat down and outlined the entire series. I mean, I didn't plot all the books. I know all the series across the 12 books. I know approximately what is going to happen in each of the books and who the major characters are going to be for those books, and what the major movements are going to be for all the various story arcs and characters that I keep picking up moving through book to book to book. So there was a lot of work that was done up front, and I knew what the series looked like before I even published the first one. So that's another way of doing it, is to have it all sorted out right from the beginning. And then there is a third way, which is probably the way it happens most often, is, as I said, they rather than writing from book to book to book, they'll write one book or maybe two, and then the series gets a good response. So then the author will sit down, roll up their sleeves, and figure out the rest of the series. Excuse me. Let's have a quick look at comments before I pick up and carry on. Hi, Mary. Hello. Anna, cause of the original pain, I have no idea, Anna. I just woke up with it one morning. So, and ibuprofen is the one that knocked me silly the first day. So I don't usually take drugs, so I think it had a big impact on me as a result. So let's get back to series now. Why do authors write series? Well, I'll get to that one in a minute, but the actual series storytelling is quite a bit different from how you tell a story in a book, because with a series, just like with a TV series, you can have a major character, but you can have secondary characters having all their own story arcs as well. You can have an overarching storyline. For instance, in Project Cobra, the first book in the series is Hunting the Cobra, where we set up the storyline that the CIA unit is actually trying to find the spy master, the strategist, who calls himself the codename Cobra. And that is going to be the entire series arc, is tracking down the Cobra, which is why the series is called Project Cobra. So you end up with some very complex long-form storytelling that you can get over the entire series, and just like TV, and I suspect that TV series storytelling has had a lot to do with how successful book series are as a result, because readers like the very long tales, but at the same time they like shorter books. It's been proven over and over again that shorter books sell better than the longer ones. And so an author can do a very long story with very short installments. So when I say very short, I'm talking about novel length. So it's a full novel, 50,000, 40,000 up is actually the official bottom level of a novel length, up to 100,000, and then you're into the supersized novels after that. And most indie authors keep it down around 50, 60, about 70,000 before they start getting into lots of subplots and things like that. Anyway, series arcs let you put a lot of suspense in, and story questions that don't get answered straight away, so it can draw the reader in so that they can enjoy a very long and complex story. On the other hand, the downside of series is sometimes authors introduce cliffhangers as well. And there's one thing that readers cannot stand. It's cliffhangers. The only thing is, though, a lot of readers have heard this term cliffhanger and have learned to associate cliffhanger with any ongoing storyline that's held over to another book. Whereas the technical version of cliffhanger, it's a term from the classic movies in the 1920s and 30s, where you would literally have the hero or the heroine hanging off a cliff, and then the camera would close and everyone would have to come back next week to find out what happened to the heroine, if she got saved or not. And of course she got saved, but everyone to come back next week just to find out what happened to her. And I think one of the classic examples is The Perils of Pauline. That may be a name you remember. If you have a look at that one, look it up. That's actually a true cliffhanger, is where at the very point of the highest point of suspense, the story stops to be started and finished at another time. That's an actual cliffhanger. Whereas if the story all gets wrapped up except for some overarching series questions, that's not really a cliffhanger. But a lot of readers will get upset if there's even story questions hanging on after a book is all wrapped up, because they think that's a cliffhanger, and it's actually not. But some authors do put cliffhangers in there because they don't care, or they're not aware of the difference. So sometimes you can get bitten in a series by having a book end with a cliffhanger, which can be quite annoying. I agree with you on that one. And okay, so there's also, of course, different types of series. So most series have, it's very common to have 3 or 4 or 5 books in a series. For some reason, the odd numbers seem to be more popular than even. It's kind of unusual to see a 4-book series, but 3 and 5 books or 7 books seem to be very popular. I suspect actually that the reason that they go for the odd numbers is because of the way that traditional and classic story structure is arranged, and it's in 3 acts. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So 3 books or 5 books or 7 books lend themselves very well to being chopped up, like the story arc over the series being chopped up in that classic pattern, so that a good storytelling can be maintained across the length of the series. It's almost instinctive in authors to head in that direction, I think, which is why there are odd-numbered series more than there are even numbers. A lot of the series that I do are like that. There's 3, 4, or 5, and then I finish the series because I actually want to tell a complete story in that series, and then that's it. And then you get the ongoing and open-ended series. Kiss Across Time is the obvious one. There's some ongoing story questions that hang in there across the series, but mostly the books are one-off, featuring all the same characters from book to book to book. And there'll be a different set of characters that will be like the major characters for that story, for that book, or sometimes for 2 or 3 books. So that's the thing with series, is they allow you to do lots of interesting things with story characters. And then you get the traditional romance version of series. I'm sure you know which ones I'm talking about. I remember when I first started reading a series by, and I can't remember her name. I've told you, J.D. Robb, sorry. So she was writing a 3-book series, and I read the first one, and it was great, and really loved all the characters that she introduced. Got the second book, was really excited to get into it, and the second couple were featured in that book. Everyone else had disappeared. Like, the first couple from the first romance were gone. They got a brief mention in the first chapter, and that was it. Never saw them again. And I'm like, no, this is no. But traditional published romance series are like that. And the reasoning was that in order to have a romantic couple brought back into a future book, the only way to tell the story is to insert trouble into their romance, or else you're not telling a romance. But that would destroy the myth of the happy ever after. So traditional publishers would never let a romantic couple from a previous book come into a future book in the series, because the only way to show them in the story terms, in romance terms, would be to show them having troubles. So they avoided it altogether by just not having them show up in a series at all. So romance series were always connected by a setting or there might be an ongoing story arc. The one I read from J.D. Robb had, there was a paranormal mystery suspense line that they had to solve in like 3 installments, but you would never have ongoing characters. And you can get the same sort of barely related series in other genres as well. The perfect example is cozy mysteries. You'll have the quaint little detective, amateur detective, the amateur sleuth, who is from book to book to book. Miss Marple is the perfect example. But the characters, all the other characters and the stories are all completely standalone within that series. The only connection is that major character. But these days, because readers have shown that they prefer the long-form storytelling, quite often, even authors that have been doing standalone series of standalone books with connecting characters or one character, are starting to put ongoing storylines and questions to be answered in the future books and stuff like that in as well, just to get the reader involved in the series. Okay, so I'll just pause for a second and have a quick look at comments, because I can see that there's been some build up, and then I'll get to the end of this one. So, Audrey, I was just amazed at your list of books for the Once and Future Hearts. Yes, from beginning to end. Yes, exactly, Audrey. I had plotted out the entire series, and I did the 12 books because Arthur had 12 major battles before he had his decisive victory over the Saxons, and peace that lasted for a generation. So, but yes, that was one that I had plotted out. I had all the books sorted out from the very beginning. The other one that I did long time ago, and tried to do it with traditional publishing, of course, was the Vestaria Has Fallen series. I had all 5 books figured out from the very beginning and actually pitched it to Alora's Cave as a series. And they took it, but I only ever got three books in the series were published through Alora's Cave. And then when we parted, I spent the 2, 3, 4 years trying to get the rights back. Finally did, and then reproduced them myself, and then relaunched them all over again as non-erotic romance. So yeah, it's a series that continued on. And Kathy said, yes, I've just read a book like that. One of the main characters was pulled messily out of a car through a broken window at the end. Yes, that would be pretty much, that would be your traditional cliffhanger. So, Karen, I've just powered through Once and Future Heart series. I couldn't put it down. Thank you. I hate hearing things like that. It's just awful. So, good. Thank you. All right, so let's get back to series, and we'll wrap this up very quickly. Okay. Why is every writer writing series these days? It's a particularly indie authors. It's a fairly simple answer. The fairly simple answer is readers have demonstrated via sales that they like series storytelling. And I'm not talking by just a little bit more than standalone books. I'm talking about masses of difference, thousands of copies difference, which indie authors are, well, they're being foolish if they ignore that. But I suspect that the other reason, and I know this is the reason why I do it, is that indie authors like telling really long, convoluted, complex stories with complex, fully developed characters, which they can't do in the shorter novels that everyone prefers these days, but they can do over a series. Not only that, but a series lets you focus on different characters for different books. So you're not having the same characters running all the way through the book as the central characters. Everyone gets to tell their story. So you end up with some very complex universes by the end of the series. So readers like them, authors like them. There doesn't seem to be anything against them except for the occasional cliffhanger, which seems to be the one thing that people don't like as far as series are concerned. So if an author can stay away from doing classic cliffhangers, then everyone benefits. Everyone likes series. And of course, with indie publishing, you are guaranteed to get to the end of the series unless you've got an author that just loses interest or something like that. Usually I suppose it's possible that an indie author who is very commercially oriented may look at their sales and go, it's not worth me writing any more of these. And to a certain degree, that's what I did with the science fiction romance. The sales were so weak that it was really hard for me to justify going in and finishing the series. However, I've been getting a lot of, that was like 2-3 years ago now, and I've got a lot of reader feedback since then. Plus, of course, those series are still out there, still available. You can still buy them. And so readers have been discovering them bit by bit over the last few years. So whereas I may have had, and this is purely for the sake of discussion, let's say I only had 1,000 readers when I first was doing the series, in that intervening 2-3 years, I've picked up another, let's say, 5,000 readers who've discovered it, tripped over the series, and have read all the way through. And now they really want to see the end of the series too. So suddenly now it's worthwhile picking up the series and carrying on. And I'm sure I have announced this in various places, but the Endurance, the science fiction romance series about the generation ship with its 1,000-year journey, is back on the production schedule. And I think I'm about 3 books away from starting the next book in the series. So it'll be out late at the end of the year. Anyway, so if you've got any questions, let me know about series, even stupid stuff. Audrey says, I love the long series because the characters are more real, more story over which to develop the characters. Yes, exactly. And I think that's why authors like it too, because they can get really involved, rich character development in a series. And they're not info dumping all that stuff in the space of a short book. So the reader's not turned off either. The reader gets to know the character bit by bit, the way you would in real life, actually. Okay, so I kind of powered through today. Mary, yay for more endurance books. Okay, good. And actually, yes, this is a question I have got. I just thought of this one too. I have been asked a couple of times if I know how the endurance series is going to end and if I have plotted that one out too. And the answer is yes. I do know how the series is going to end. I know approximately how many books are going to be in it. Basically, I have, well, let's say I have the destination in mind. Don't ask me if they actually get to their destination that they think they're going to in the book, because I won't tell you. That'd just spoil it. So, let me see. No more comments or questions. I could wait a little bit to see if the delay is going to kick anyone in, but it doesn't look like anyone's writing or anything like that. So for today, I got through without wincing. Yay! I'm not sure what we'll be talking about next week. If you've got the topic in mind, of course, email me. I think there is a new book. We'll have a new book 1 week away from release next week, so I might talk about that one. We'll see how it goes. In the meantime, have a great week. Enjoy the sunshine, and if you're in the northern hemisphere, I hope you're enjoying the warmer weather. It was great. We had windows open yesterday. It was wonderful. But in the meantime, I need to go get some water because I forgot to put some next to me. Oops. And Karen, have your clocks gone forward? Yes, indeed, they have. Did I catch you an hour earlier? Because, of course, there is no daylight saving in Australia, or depends on the state, I think, too. But yes, we are an hour earlier here at the moment because daylight savings is in. So, yes, so that's it. I keep saying, I've got to get out of that habit. Okay, that's it for this week. Have a great week. I'll catch up with you next week. I'll try and find something interesting to talk about then too. Meantime, I got to go back and get writing again. I'm into Scandalous Scions Book 10. I don't have a title yet, but I do have it plotted. So I got to go back and write that. See ya.